Last week on the Nicoletti Show. Welcome to the show, Chad Fears.
Your general transaction is going to be get a deed from the seller to the buyer, get a mortgage payoff for the seller's mortgage, get a valid mortgage from the buyer's lender on some draft documents. Anything like that that pops up in public record. Title insurance companies in Florida and everywhere else insure that quitclaim deed just like it was a regular general warranty deed, but only if it's from the government entity.
All this is valuable stuff to know. When you come across these in your deals, you never know.
It's all about relationships, building the solid relationships with the title company, with the probate attorneys, with realtors from other offices so that you can work across the table together.
Golden nuggets right there, right, Chad?
Yeah. Estates, enhanced life estates throw a lot of curveballs into closings because who needs to sign?
We have the Al Nicoletti t-shirt for Chad. Chad, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
This has been a lot of fun. Boy, that was a fun episode last week on the Al Nicoletti Show with Chad Fears. We talked about everything in that title insurance world and some crazy stories he talked about. And if you didn't catch it at the end, talking about a really hot topic right now on these vacant lots, these fraudulent sellers that are happening all around Florida, and I'm sure probably around the country too, with these foreign sellers in other countries. If you didn't catch it, you got to go back and check it out. And we talked everything on title insurance, had a great time. And I'm so happy to be back here in the studio. A lot of you don't realize that actually the show is live today. I'm sure y'all probably think I'm crazy. I was in Clearwater yesterday. I drove down to Clearwater. I'm back in the studio today for a special episode. I had to be in the studio for this one. And tomorrow, I'm going back to Tampa for the TB RIA meeting on the Crushing Florida Probate Tour. So I'm back in Tampa, and then after that, I don't even know what's happening then. But I'm ping-ponging around and enjoying the tour and everything. But I'm in the studio today, and you guys are going to love this guest. I've never had on an attorney that does divorce and on the scale that Rick is doing. So this is going to be an exciting episode. I can't wait for you all to hear Rick. It's going to be great. Make sure you got your pens, your papers, all of that stuff is out there because you want to take notes on everything Rick is talking about when it comes to divorce, but not only just divorce. We're going to get into divorce and real estate. Right? That's what we talk about on the Al Nicoletti Show, which is divorce, but real estate and how you can get those divorce leads or maybe tap into them. But here's the thing. You're not going to know when we're going to talk about the divorce lead part. You got to stay tuned. I could talk about that in the beginning, the middle, the end. I'm going to have everybody stay tuned just for that. But, this is going to be a great episode. So I'm going to do my introduction because Rick is backstage. He's ready to go. He's ready to talk all about divorce. So here's the introduction that I normally do. So stay tuned. Let's have a fun episode tonight. Hey, everybody. My name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida. And welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and beyond. Beyond Florida, we're not just bringing on people in Florida. We are bringing on people national and probably international at some point, but bringing on people that are providing a ton of value to a lot of the listeners out there, whether you're in the Florida market or the U.S. market or beyond, on how you out there can take your business to the next level. I don't even know how I have this kind of energy today. I've had like 15 appointments back to back. It's been absolute insanity. But this is exciting. I can't wait to bring the guest on. Rick is backstage, and we're going to dive in on divorce, real estate, the basics, which you got to know. You got to stay tuned. So, hey, without further ado, let's bring him to the show. Rick, welcome to the show, man. So good to see you. I haven't seen you in like 3-4 years. I mean, you want to talk about, and just before you say anything, if you all want to know an excellent divorce lawyer, you're looking at him right now. This is an excellent divorce lawyer, and he understands the ins and outs. He's been doing this for over 30 years. He's been doing it so long. He knows a lot of the tricks of the trade. So, Rick, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Al. It's been a pandemic ago. That's the last time we saw each other. It's great to be on the show, and I'd rather not talk about how long I've been doing this. It's becoming a bit of an embarrassment at this point. But forever. When I first started, there was fault in the state of Florida, and Florida is a no-fault state now. So it's all a business deal, really. It's all about litigating a partnership and separating the parties and dividing up the assets. And that brings us to real estate internationally as well as locally and nationally.
Yeah, no, this is going to be great because we're going to get in on the basics, dive in on the real estate stuff, some of the tough things that people come across in divorce. And a lot of the audience, they're those realtors, professionals, investors, everybody that's out there that's watching this. So this is going to be a ton of value. So Rick, we'll talk about how you're doing in your world, but introduce yourself to everybody out there, who you are, how you got started in that divorce world, and how you transitioned, over those years in really seeing the divorce and real estate world.
Absolutely. I was admitted to practice law in 1981. And at that point in time, I really had my heart set on doing criminal defense work. And I went to work with a lawyer who was a cigar smoking, swaggering criminal defense lawyer back in the rockin' 80s. And it was the cocaine cowboys. I mean, he was a very prominent divorce lawyer. We argued in front of the Florida Supreme Court, and he always had a touch of family law in his practice. And so I learned that trade. As time went by, both criminal law and family law, Al, they both got very, very sophisticated. They both became very rule oriented. They both became very statutorily oriented. It was no longer just sort of common law stuff. And as a consequence, at some point you have to make a choice. And if you're going to excel, you need to pick one. And sometime back in the 90s, I chose family law. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And since that time, to just show you the evolution of my field of practice, since that time, the Florida Supreme Court has enacted a whole set of rules designed solely and exclusively for family law. And there's a whole chapter that is designed for divorce. Then there's a chapter for juvenile. There are separate parts of the statutes for support. And there's even a great deal of statutory material regarding the division of property, which I know is what draws people to your show. And there's no better place than divorce to apply that trade, quite frankly, because today in Miami, which is an international hub, as you well know, you're dealing with property in the United States, abroad, across the pond, as they say, South America. It all becomes about property because that's where the value is in many of the marital estates.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, Rick is a Florida attorney, and he focuses on the family law and divorce side of things and sees a lot of real estate issues, especially things that come up in the Florida market in Miami and South Florida. And you're dealing with high estates. You're dealing with high property values. I mean, look, Rick, look at the market now. In the last year, you're talking about marital assets that have appreciated $100,000, $200,000 up over what it was pre-pandemic or more in that market. And now you're talking about assets that are more valuable than they ever were. And you become more valuable for those situations because you're all trying to figure out asset distribution and where things are going. So for those out there, and we can get into the basics of what happens in the family law world, but on the basic levels of real estate and divorce, what are those types of assets that they see out there before we transition into real estate?
Absolutely. So generally speaking, it consists of the liquid assets, investments, 401ks, things of that nature, and the whole array of securities. Then there are in the higher net worth cases, significant art and collectibles that are often items that have both emotional value as well as monetary value. And so there are generally large disputes over the most seemingly innocuous objects, right down to heirloom items, things that one party or another may have gotten from the other party's parents. And so, of course, let's say the husband says, that was my mom's. And the wife says, yeah, but she gave it to me. So we have in our cases, and that's not to overlook the gravest of things that people fight about in divorce, which is, of course, the children. But in terms of the marital estate, it's everything imaginable. Whatever you see in the course of any given day, someone is fighting over in a divorce.
Yeah. And we see that, and we see so many of those situations. I don't see them in my world, but I know you see them, but I see them from afar because of some of the things that were happening before probate, or, what was going on there. Even something that I heard about today where the husband and the wife, they had a prenup before, he died. And everybody was like swirling over whether that prenup still held once he died. And then now we had death, dirt, and all that divorce stuff coming into play. So you see so many of those things in that world.
Well, I remember one case in particular, which I will never forget for a lot of reasons, but the best of which was the day after the wife was to remove her personal property from what was the marital residence, because we had prevailed in getting the marital residence for the husband. He called me up first thing in the morning and he said, you know that expression, she took everything but the kitchen sink? And I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. He said, well, she took sorry, can I curse on this show?
I mean, we've had a bunch of people curse on the show. Go for it.
Well, she took the kitchen sink too. So this woman left the house entirely empty. It was completely just the walls.
Yeah, remember you said that she took the kitchen sink and everything with it, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rick, talk to us also, before we get into, that asset of real estate and the ways people can really go after the lead side of it, right? So if you're staying tuned, Rick's going to dive into a little bit of that divorce leads and maybe the ways you can approach those and angle those when they come up in situations on lead sources and stuff. But Rick, talk to us a little bit about the prenup world, right? And being able to figure out how you address the real estate part in that prenup before you hit the divorce part, right? A lot of people, I don't know, when you're in practice of law, you see a lot of the things that people didn't do that they should have done. And those are things that they can do. They can sort out the economic things that they have, the economic assets before a situation arises. What are some of the things that you've seen in your world on that prenup side that deals with real estate?
Well, this is an interesting area of family law, actually, because where family law and real estate law converge in the nuptial agreements, there's three types of nuptial agreements: prenup, postnup, and then, of course, the marital settlement agreement. But in the prenup, that's the planning stage, and that's where you have to be the most careful. And that's where you want a lawyer who thinks of everything. And frankly, that's where experience comes to bear. Because, it's like that Farmers Insurance commercial. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. If you've litigated it, you know to expect it, anticipate it, and protect against it in the prenuptial agreement. And our case law has evolved to lead our prenuptial agreements as well. So, for example, in one case that is now, a leading case in Florida, the parties spoke about the fact that any property that was acquired prior to the marriage would belong to the party who owned that property prior to the marriage. But that agreement, and now it seems like ancient times, was silent on the issue of what makes property its most valuable: appreciation. And so over the course of a 20-year marriage, this property obviously quadrupled in value. And the wife said, well, the original value of the property was protected in the prenuptial agreement, but all of that appreciation that took place during our marriage, that belongs to us both. A lawyer took a big hit in that case because he did not have the experience in litigation to recognize that could become a problem. Similarly, in a case that we're handling now, the agreement says that the proceeds from the sale of any real property will belong to one party. What it doesn't say, and we didn't do this prenup, I'm proud to say, what it doesn't say is what happens to what is acquired with those proceeds. It just, so the cash that comes out, that belongs to you. But when you put it into another asset, perhaps another piece of property, who does that belong to? You have to anticipate each and every one of these things, either directly or in the abstract, to cover what you don't know now might happen then.
Wow. So you've seen those situations where you have to anticipate what happens when they take those funds and now start inputting it into a different piece of property. Or sometimes some of the, I'm sure some of the divorces and situations you've seen on the prenups is it's not just one property, it's rental properties. It's an entire asset that, a portfolio of different types of things. So like, how do you anticipate those things going into an agreement before something happens later?
Well, again, it really is, it's best prepared for by experience. So, for example, in another case that we dealt with, it was exactly what you just described. And it was not only commercial property and rental property, but it was held within a holding company. So now we have a whole company which has a myriad of assets. And the question was, how do you value it? How do you deal with it? And after, having a couple of sessions with our forensic accountant in that case, we decided, well, wait a second. In this case, this property is just inventory, like widgets or books. And as a result, we're not going to deal with it as real estate. We're going to deal with it as stock on hand. And we'll take it at its book value rather than its appreciated value when it comes time to argue about the value as the husband receives it in equitable distribution. Was that unintelligible, or did that make sense?
No, this is you having been doing it for so many years. You not only do you see it from the almost like contract side, you see it from the other side of being a litigator, actually like seeing what happens later on when the parties don't contemplate all of those things up front and what happens with the asset distribution later. And just so everybody knows, we're diving in, we're going to keep going more in, not just on a prenup. Now we're going into all of that divorce stuff and real estate. But if you have any questions for Rick out there, ask away. We're live. I see them. JB, I see your question there. We'll make sure we get to it. And everybody just ask a question. Rick's live. You got the divorce lawyer here. And I know Gina was ready to drop that question in there. We're going to make sure we get to that. We got a whole fact pattern for you. It's like a law school exam or a bar exam question right there.
Well, then I got to shout out to Kira Willett, who's of counsel to my firm and is a law school professor. So we can handle law school exams, no question.
I'll wait till you see this question. It's like this. But we'll get to that. Just make sure you drop it in and we'll get to all the questions in just a bit. So Rick, what I know you've talked about this before, but what is the number one most complicated asset to deal with when it comes to divorce?
It is real property, Al, because other assets are generally held with no questions regarding ownership, except perhaps assets that don't have any title. But you don't have, in real property, you have questions of active appreciation. In other words, improvements that the owners have made to the property before or during the marriage. You have questions of passive appreciation, what we're experiencing now that you referenced earlier with regard to a market that goes wild. And what you need to do is determine what the value of the property was, particularly if you don't have a comprehensive prenuptial agreement, is determine what the value of the property was at the time of the marriage, determine what the value of the property was at the time the petition for dissolution of marriage was filed, or possibly, because the court has the authority to look at the value at the time of the trial, and then be able to separate the two. That's a lot of complicated math. And that doesn't even touch what's happened inside the structure, if there's a structure on the property as opposed to undeveloped property, or what's happened around it, if it's undeveloped property. So it does, just because it is such a complicated area of law by itself, real property, it does lend itself to the stickiest divorce case issues. In fact, most appeals that we deal with either children's issues or the handling of real estate by the trial court.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a bunch of those things that come up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I remember you said real estate's the biggest thing that comes up in the divorce world, right? So let's talk about this. What happens when you've been able to address the bank accounts, you've been able to address the Roths, the 401ks, and all of a sudden there cannot be an agreement over what happens with the marital property, right? Let's just say husband and wife, they can't agree to getting the house sold, but they know that they want to make some kind of agreement. And I've been able to see where there's an ability to structure that kind of situation a certain way, whether maybe the husband stays there as a life tenant and then the wife has a remainder interest, or maybe they force the sale of that property. What are some of those ways to resolve a sticky situation when there cannot be an agreement as to what happens with that estate?
I'm glad you asked the question that way, Al, because one of the things that people think about when they think about high-end divorce lawyers and high-end divorces is these guys are gunslingers. They're great litigators. I love trying cases, but I will be the first to tell anyone that a trial is a failure of all desirable alternatives for the resolution of a dispute. And so the real key to handling a high net worth divorce, particularly one with the kinds of property issues that we're discussing, is to be able to fashion a remedy that allows both parties to feel the satisfaction of having accomplished something that they might not have accomplished in court, but didn't require all of the cost of litigation. Because too often, what you're talking about, which is that prized, palace, the marital residence that people have held for 30 years and bought for $100,000 and now worth a couple of million, that is spent on professionals. And that's really a shame. Responsible professionals fashion remedies such as what you're describing now. And among the ways we do that is we can either have one party finance the other. We can have parties hold a property for a certain length of time within which they must either refinance or sell. We've had all sorts of remedies like that. In fact, in one case, we've recently proposed, and now I'm talking your language, so please don't correct my accent. We proposed a life estate to one party, and then the other spouse would take the remainder. Is it remainder?
Yeah, remainder, man.
It's been a long time since Blackacre for me.
Blackacre, Whiteacre.
In the event of the death when the death occurred of the other spouse.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things about having you on the show to talk about that, right? So a lot of people don't realize, I mean, there's divorce lawyers out there, but then you hear about stories where divorce lawyers didn't even contemplate what happens with the marital asset before the final judgment comes out. And all of a sudden they're dealing with that on another situation as a post-divorce lead. And now they're ex-husband, ex-wife. And sometimes lawyers don't contemplate what is the solution to when you have a deal where the husband and the wife can't agree, right? And one thing that you and I have discussed about is when the husband and the wife can't agree. And I learned this from you, Rick. I thought partition on real estate couldn't happen if the parties were married and even in a divorce. But you're like, no, that's the exception, right? You can't force a sale of a property if they are married, except if they're in divorce. So tell everybody, what is partition and how could that play out in a situation where the husband and wife don't agree to the real estate? And here we go, everybody. What's the opportunity for a realtor or somebody that wants to buy that property in the event there is a partition?
Well, don't let me give away too much, because I like this whole idea of a spoiler being hidden for the end. But at the end of the day, a creative lawyer realizes he has endless needs for real estate professionals. So honestly, when you first mention a real estate agent or broker, the first thing that comes to mind for me is I have a case now where there's a piece of property on waterfront in Miami Beach value approximately $5.5 million, which is not really even, monumental on Miami Beach on the water these days. And we wanted to get it sold as quickly as we possibly could get it sold, because who knows when bubble bursts in this world. Something breaks new every day. So we didn't have time to get an appraiser, and we also, who are used often, speaking of other real estate professionals, but in a market as explosive as this, our theory was there are going to be a lot of private sales that never really hit the MLS. So we brought in a real estate agent who is an expert on waterfront properties, and she did a market analysis on our client's property, and it was as comprehensive, frankly, in my view, as anything I've ever seen regarding the value of real estate. And then she testified as an expert in court for us and was an incredibly persuasive witness. And what we're trying to do is avoid the need for partition, which I'll get right back to, because in a family law case, the court has inherent authority to order any marital asset sold pre-judgment, provided the statutory requirements are met. And particularly if the sale, the proceeds are being held in trust until the final judgment, the court is actually adjudicating the same asset in a different form. So there's an opportunity, endless opportunities for real estate agents in connection with that sort of offbeat role. Aside, of course, from the fact that generally speaking, in a world in which most people are house poor, most people are, there's no doubt about it, the houses may be worth millions, but that's what they own and that's where they put their savings, then you're going to need someone to sell it. They're both going to need someone to sell it. And wouldn't it be nice if you're the person who both lawyers agree is the most reliable and the person who's likely to fetch the highest price? So you real estate agents, that's who you want to market yourself to, both sides of divorces, not just one or the other.
Wow. Golden nugget right there from Rick. So Rick, you brought up a great point. You said with that case with the waterfront property, you brought in an expert realtor on waterfront property. How big was having that person be an expert in that niche right there helpful to both of the divorce lawyers? Because it seems that either that certification or that niche that they were doing mattered to that particular situation. Because I could just think of agents and investors right now thinking of like, wait a second, I'm an expert in this field. And that may help situations where the husband and the wife can't agree on that estate or try to list that property for top dollar. Like, how important is that?
It's complete. It is experience. It is, to use your phrase, the golden nugget, because anyone with a real estate license can sell, as you say, any piece of dirt in the state of Florida. But if all you do is sell waterfront property, then your book of business is real estate buyers who are looking for waterfront property. And my own personal story, when I sold my residence, which was on the water on Miami Beach, we managed, because we hired a guy, frankly, gave me a cold call and said, "Is your house for sale?" And my response was what most people say to that question: everything's for sale. And he set a price for my island with the sale of my house, because he just specialized in waterfront property, had the connections in South America, and made the connections in Europe to where moneyed buyers were looking to come to this international hub.
Yeah. So that's really important to have that kind of certification. Yeah.
And that's really also why family lawyers will seek you out if you make yourself known to them.
Wow. So there you go. Cause I'm thinking right now of like, what's that opportunity? Like, how do you position yourself as not just any divorce leads, but maybe niching out? Maybe that's the opportunity. If you cast the net too wide, maybe that opportunity is not there. But if you position yourself as, hey, we're specialists in land, or specialists in that foreclosure world, or specialists on waterfront property or luxury property, that may help both sides. And like you're saying, you got to not just go after one attorney on one side, but the other, because they both have to be in agreement on that end.
And any two good lawyers are looking for a resolution that best meets their client's needs at a price that best meets their client's pocketbook. So it doesn't matter whether you're representing someone who's worth billions or millions or hundreds of thousands. If you've got a responsible lawyer on the other side, in terms of his own business, what he's saying is, if I do a good job for this client, if I resolve this without a trial, if I present this without the divorce nightmare, well, this person's going to become 10 other referrals. And that's what a responsible professional realizes. So there's the grand slam home run divorce cases. We were involved in one where there was actually $10 million in fees to the professionals on both sides. That's the total. And that was an incredible experience too. But fortunately, most of them get resolved without trial. And we use professionals, both for the real estate professionals, both for the trials, as well as to help guide us to what is a reasonable settlement.
Sounds like the lawyers made more money than the clients.
Well, there was some forensic psychiatrists in that one too, because you got to play the pathology,
Yeah, I hear you. Well, like you're saying, you also have to build a team around you to be able to get those situations done. So, I mean, there's other real estate adjacent services even out there that may be watching, thinking, wait a second, we could be an asset to a divorce situation. So what are some of the other pieces in place that come that participate when you find those situations?
I'll tell you the simplest one, and it's a take from your guest last week, because I saw your pre-show video from last week. And in my office, we don't do any real estate work. So if even, and this just happened this week, we had a prenuptial agreement, which the parties had agreed to abide by, and a quitclaim deed needed to be prepared in the event that the agreement was sold, because part of the prenup involved a premarital distribution of property. And we referred them to a real estate attorney, because that's not what we do. We do divorce, and I know to stay in my lane on a busy highway, and I don't want a quitclaim deed that gets torn to shreds or treated like a warranty deed, as your guest last week had said.
Yeah.
So at every stage and from every level of simplicity to complexity, you can bring in a real estate lawyer. And if you're doing this work, and forgive me because I don't want to sound immodest, I really have self-esteem issues, but if you're doing this kind of work at a high level, you don't want to learn property law. You want to bring in a property lawyer. You want to bring in a broker or a real estate agent to guide your client in their field, as opposed to presuming you know enough about it.
Yeah. So forensic accountants, CPAs, but more importantly, having that real estate attorney maybe on the title end that understands on how to address those situations, because maybe the real estate is going through something really crazy and weird, and working with the right professionals that can work through those things. So, and you touched up on a great point, like situations that come up where, maybe people were divorced. We've seen situations where people were divorced in another state, Rick, and they got their divorce decree out of state, but now there's still property here in Florida. And that order, that judgment is never domesticated here in Florida. And now you're dealing with the real estate here in Florida. How do you address those situations when you got to deal with title insurance, domesticating that, and overcoming a crazy title issue where you can't domesticate that? What do you do in those cases?
So if you're in Florida dealing with property that's outside the state of Florida, the most important thing to remember is that your court does not have jurisdiction to adjudicate that property. It can only tell the party who owns the property, it can only order a party who owns the property to do something with respect to it. That's one important thing to know. The second is you've got to reach out to a professional who knows the real estate law in that state, who's licensed to do the work in that state. Because particularly in this virtual world, there are all sorts of unauthorized practice of law cases being brought by the bars of the various states for professionals who step outside of their state boundaries virtually in order to give legal advice. So you have to be very, very careful about that. If you're a real estate professional working a case in another state, what are the boundaries of your license? Do you need to suggest to the lawyer you're working for that in addition to you, he needs a colleague of yours who you know in another state from another transaction? That's important as well.
Yeah, because I mean, there have been situations where there was already that divorce out of state, but now to finalize the Florida property, title insurance sometimes wants a order from an out of state to be domesticated here in Florida, and they said if that wasn't even possible, then there needed to be like a partition or some kind of quiet title or some kind of other mechanism around it. So I could see like where working with the right people in the title world can really help. But it's also crucial that we have people that are knowledgeable like you, Rick, that understand how to overcome those things. And a lot of those situations pop up. And I mean, seen some things recently that come up with orders out of state, and title insurance doesn't want to insure because orders aren't approved here in Florida. So seen those things come up from time to time.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you dead air, but I'm not a pro at the video thing. You've introduced me to that, and I grab my charger, which I guess is an embarrassing amateurish kind of move when you're on a podcast. Can you bear with me 1 second?
Yeah, no, well, good. So anytime this happens, we start talking about the tour because Steve Rosenberg, he froze on the screen for like a solid 10 minutes. So I'll talk about the tour, but I'll talk about you also. So go for it. Get that in charge. We don't want to lose the momentum. So, you know, what Rick's going through right now, talking all about the divorce in real estate, really good to know because we'll talk about the ways that you can really dive in on tackling those leads. I mean, so many lead sources and lead source companies get into divorce leads, but what he was just talking about with certifications as being a realtor in a niche, that can actually help a lot because if you're an expert in waterfront, you're expert in foreclosure or expert in some kind of land, or there's maybe multiple properties or commercial property, and you narrow your way into that kind of situation on a divorce, that could be really huge. So make sure you check that out and go back if you didn't check that out before. So yeah, and by the way, while we're waiting for Rick to come back, we don't even have a commercial break thing. So now you got me. I'm going to be doing my whole monologue thing going on. So everybody knows that I'm on tour right now, and tomorrow I'm going to be in Tampa. So if you are in the Tampa area, come check it out. You got to be there. I'm going to be doing my whole tour thing. I'll be there tomorrow, Thursday night, at 7:30, and the TB RIA. It's going to be a great event. And after that, I'm going to be at another event in May, and May 13th. So that you got to check all that stuff out if you're able to go to that. I think it's Real Estate Ladies Rock. They want me to come be a speaker there. So it's going to be a blast over in Jupiter. But check it out. A lot of stuff going on. And if you got any questions on the show and anything for Rick, you know, please ask away. We love the fans out there. I want to know who's watching. Who's watching tonight? If you're watching, I know I see you guys are watching. Like who's actually there tonight?
I'm watching.
No, Rick, we see you. Like, I want roll call. Like, tell us, like, drop a comment in there. Even if you're like slouched on your pillow or something, like hit a button, hit a love, and hit a fire sign. Like, who's out there? Who's watching us tonight? We love that you're watching, and you're watching an excellent divorce attorney because this guy's seen a lot. And we love knowing where everybody's watching from. You know, Rick, I have an audience that they'll watch from Florida, but they'll watch in Texas and Ohio and a whole bunch of other states. So, you know, they know people here in Florida, and some do investing virtually in Florida. That's what's been crazy about the pandemic world, especially probably for you, is that you don't have to just be in Miami to do, you don't have to be in Tampa to do a divorce, right? You can be in Miami and do it virtually. And the same thing for people in real estate. People are doing deals from Israel in Florida. You know, just, I mean, it's crazy what everything's happened since the pandemic. So, yeah. So we're going to keep rolling with you, Rick, on all of this stuff. And I really want to get into, while we got the time, we got the viewers in the audience, about really tackling the divorce leads and understanding how people can really get in it. So here's what happens, right? You have companies out there I think Foreclosures Daily is doing it. There's other lead providers that are doing it. I think Christina Kraus does that kind of stuff with her team. But there's lead providers out there that they'll dive into divorce leads, right? It's on public record. The complaints out there, everybody knows. They may put the information sheet, the factual information sheet, or the complaint lists all the assets. And a lot of people want to know, how do you get those leads? Where do you get those leads? What are some ways that investors and realtors can really find their groove and their way when they get into these types of leads with divorce, whether it's during the divorce or whether it's after the divorce? What are some of those big takeaways we talked about a couple days ago when you get into these things?
So I'm smiling because for clients who hire my office, we have a hack so people don't bother you because they have these leads. So if you want to know how to avoid the people with the leads, you can call me also. But
Wow.
we're trying to promote those leads right now, so I'll save that for the paying clients. On this front, the clerk of the court, that's it. That is your complete gold mine, because we are required to fill out a civil cover sheet for every divorce we file. And that civil cover sheet has the petitioner's address, the respondent's address. They're all listed right there. So when it comes to, the old snail mail, you have it right there. In addition, somewhere in most of the cover sheets at least in Dade County, and as well in Broward and Palm Beach County, where I most often practice, you see the email address, and you get to reach out through the email address as well, which is, immediate contact. So those are the principal ways to get the leads, the clerk of the court, and that civil cover sheet. It is a statewide form in the state of Florida, and most other states have a similar comparable form. It's the first piece of paper filed in any divorce.
Public record right there. Golden nuggets from Rick right there. Okay, so first and foremost, Rick, you're even saying you have the leads.
Well, what happens is it's interesting. I sometimes, I don't know if you know, I think you may know about this, but I sometimes get the lead letters because of the way we handle our civil cover sheets. And so I know that there are divorce lawyers begging for your work, real estate professionals saying, I can sell your house. By the way, do you know your husband filed a divorce against you? It's everybody gets that lead, and they contact every way available on that lead. The other, now that's going to put you sort of like at ground zero, because you really, I'm guessing most of your listeners don't want every divorce that's filed. They want the divorce where there's real property, and they want the divorce where there's substantial real property and opportunities for them as a consequence of that. And the best way to do that is a little bit the old-fashioned way, but it starts here. It starts with this kind of connection to you, and that's the people you know. It's about the people you know. If you know and have developed a relationship with a lawyer who does high net worth divorces, then you're the person that the lawyer is going to call. And quite frankly, looking after my own interests for a moment, if you're referring cases to a lawyer who does high net worth divorce cases, then you're the person they're going to call when they need a high-end real estate professional to help either process those cases, litigate those cases, resolve those cases, or liquidate the real estate assets from those cases.
Yeah. So, and what you're talking about really is building those relationships in those situations, because over time, you never know where that groove is for you, for the realtor, the investor, whoever is really seeing that deal. And, I'm sure you get so many letters. You talk about a really interesting thing is, on the probate side of things, a lot of investors and realtors, they'll send letters to what the personal representative, or they'll send letters to heirs. But a lot of times they'll send the standard letter, we'll close in 30 days as is, cash, and they'll put it in the letter. Have you ever seen anything interesting in the mail marketing of the letters that you've gotten? And if there were any cold calls that you thought were like, wow, this was different. I didn't really expect someone to like write this or like say this. And it really, it stuck out to you among the pile. Like, are you thinking of anything?
There's one I think that at this point is a bit ubiquitous. We all see it everywhere, and that is "We Buy Ugly Homes." The first time I saw that, I don't know if you're familiar with that ad. It's everywhere, and the guy who thought, actually, the father of the fellow who thought of that was a preeminent family divorce attorney in Miami who passed just last year. But that was just an eye-catching idea, and marketing really is the same everywhere. You want someone's attention for that second, that millisecond, that turns them away from something else and focuses on you. So it kind of doesn't matter, it seems today, if it's kitschy or not, so long as it's catchy. And that's the goal you go for, to catch someone's eye. So, I mean, in terms of that kind of promotion, if you're doing direct mail, it's got to catch an eye. It's like a cold call. You get a cold call, and the first thing you think is, how do I hang up on this fellow without hanging up on this fellow? Unless he says something that catches your attention, that strikes you as, oh, this guy's extraordinary. This girl's extraordinary. I want to talk to him a little bit longer. And that's the key right there. And part of that is the old saw about, you got to be yourself. If you're not comfortable in your own skin, it ain't working.
Yeah, and something that's catchy. I mean, We Buy Ugly Homes. I mean, that's been around a while. But like even verbiage, the way things are phrased in the letters can really make a difference on impact of, whoa, this is different. Or I don't know, maybe going back to certifications, or you're an expert in this, that could actually stand out. Something like you said, Rick, that could really make a difference. And then you're talking about public records. And I see everybody that's watching. Kira's watching, Guillermo, Gina, JB, Alan Williams is watching, Guillermo. And Guillermo just said something interesting. He goes, divorce real estate is a niche, but sounds very complicated. I'm down for it. LOL. And he said something, what did he say? Volusia County Clerk of Court record search. I'm on there daily. So, Rick, you're talking about even searching through public records. Sometimes it's not easy going through the public records, and maybe not every divorce has real estate. So what are your thoughts on really sifting through the public records? And are there any other indicators of an opportunity when it comes to real estate in the divorce file?
Well, I actually think, Guillermo has kind of nailed it. It's recognizing that it's a niche and saying, you know what? Why am I not in this niche? It's only because I've not really chosen to be and not taken any action to do it. And forgive me now for shamelessly promoting you, but on your tours, you bring these people together virtually as well as live, depending upon the forum you're picking. So that's the best place to meet other people who are doing this and becoming a part of their circle. For yourself even. I mean, the whole notion that you're bringing, all of these people are flocking to the Nicoletti Show.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
Thank you, Rick. Whether I'm on the road or I'm on virtual, right? Like, it's always connecting and making connections.
But here's the thing. If you were sitting behind that microphone droning for an hour, Guillermo would have dropped off at 8:15, and Kira, she wouldn't have stayed to 8:03. It's because you've got that engaging personality. So that's another thing I would tell people. Make yourself be someone that people are attracted to, even if it is your transactional person.
I think we should see if I drone for about an hour, see how many people stay on. I wonder if the viewers will go up. On Twitch, they may go up. For some reason, it's a weird thing on Twitch, but we'll see. How many people would watch if I just sat here like a mom and just didn't do anything? But no, that's not what we're going to do. But it's all about relationships and making connections. That's why I love all the fans that are watching, people that are watching the show and always engaging, asking great questions. And that's what it's really all about, and building the relationships. So, Rick, what are some other key ways to really help for realtors and investors to really get into getting more divorce leads? Like, what other things and ideas are out there that you've seen or you've thought about that, ooh, that's a real avenue? Maybe it's helping the situation or helping them maybe with moving or helping come in and saying, hey, how do we get involved in this?
Well, I think one of the things that you can do is send out an informational newsletter. You know, either warning of traps for a population or an area code, or the emails that you can mine from other public records, and or warning of opportunities. Alerting to opportunities. So, for example, I had one professional with whom I worked who used to write to people within a particular area in which he had his market about the potential for danger, even when you're reaching an agreement in a dissolution of marriage. There was a couple who had agreed to refinance the home, and they were in foreclosure, and they couldn't get refinancing, and so someone approached them and said, "I tell you what, I can afford your mortgage. I can pay your mortgage. I will give you $2,500 for your house, even though you're upside down and the bank is about to foreclose, and I'll take over your mortgage because I can weather the market." Well, they said, "Great idea. We don't need a professional for this." And they signed over a quitclaim deed. Well, he never assumed the mortgage. So now Bank of America, I don't know if it's wrong to mention a brand, some bank whose name we won't mention on your show, is chasing down after the former owners of this house who have sold it for $2,500 and never had their mortgage satisfied. Any one of the professionals watching your show could have told them that that's a risk and that's a danger. And if it's in a newsletter, watch out for mortgage angels, foreclosure angels. Then you're the person they think of when they want to sell their house. I want that real estate agent who knows that stuff. That's invaluable knowledge. I want the lawyer who's litigated that stuff. That's great. That's great knowledge. I want the appraiser who was involved in that because he knows and can guide me away from danger.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of so many different scenarios about, how you can really tap into that world, right? And that can help the education side to what the real estate market's looking like for those for attorneys and divorce attorneys that are going through those situations. Rick, something that popped in my head in a scenario that may come up on deals. Certain investors go after those divorce leads, or they find deals where the person was divorced, and in the divorce decree, the husband was supposed to quit claim their interest within 10 days of the judgment, and then never did. And then the wife's wants to sell that property, but now he still doesn't want to quit claim. And an investor finds that deal, and it's a great spread, and they're going to do something with it, maybe Airbnb or rent it. How do you handle that kind of situation where you have that divorce judgment and the ex-husband doesn't want to deed it over? What are your next steps in solving that kind of deal?
So here's where we come back to what I mentioned earlier about it is the experience of practice that informs your documents. You ask the logical question, what do you do when that comes up? But in our office, for example, the question we ask is, what can we do to prevent that from coming up? And so I'm giving this one away, okay? So yell out Golden Nuggets, because this
Golden Nugget.
Get out your pen. In our office, our final judgment expressly says that if the husband, for example, or the wife does not sign the necessary documents to convey title within X number of days, then either one, Mr. X is appointed as their attorney in fact to sign that document on their behalf, or if you want super clean title, this final judgment will act as a document of conveyance and accomplish that goal and be construed as such. So now the problem never arises because your intransigent former spouse who hates you like poison doesn't get to hold up your sale by not signing your document. But if you do reach that point, if the lawyer you had in your divorce didn't think of that, and now you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars if your former spouse is ill-inclined and motivated to hurt, because you're going to have to seek contempt where the court compels them to sign the document, and that the court can do. And I've seen people sign them with handcuffs on because the judge said, you're going to sign it now or you're going to sit in my holding cell until you do sign it. And that kind of contempt, that doesn't go away. So long as you have the power to comply with the court's order, they say you hold the keys to your jail cell, but you need to use those keys. You need to comply. That's how you handle that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen situations where they have to go back and do some kind of motion to enforce final judgment, right? And or maybe the judge basically orders that it was a deed of conveyance at that point. But those come up in real estate deals that a lot of people don't know how to solve them, and now they got to go back and fix it. And that's where our world, just like you, like me, we're problem solvers, right?
Exactly.
We see those situations come up, and how do we get through them? And that plays a huge role. And Rick, this has been great. I mean, just really getting in on the basic side of family law. And we didn't even talk about all the fighting that happens in court and all the litigation, the fun stuff, right?
It's my cinematic debut, Al.
Yeah, okay, this is part one, exactly. But Rick, when you see these deals or you see these divorce things, why is it that some lawyers don't even include the marital asset as a part of that final judgment?
Can you be more specific? I'm not really sure what you're asking.
So sometimes I've seen it happen where there's a marital home, but the divorce lawyers didn't contemplate what happens to that home. So now it becomes ex-husband, ex-wife on title. What happens usually in those scenarios? I'm sure you don't come across that because you're always contemplating what happens as a future event. But what goes on in the mind of some of those practitioners when all of a sudden they didn't contemplate what happens with the real estate after the divorce?
So that's just an omission in practice. It's egregious, and it leaves people post judgment owning the property in a different way because they're no longer married, and having to squabble over the manner in which it gets sold, and that includes who they're going to list it with, what the commission is going to be, what the listing price is going to be, what offer has to be accepted. It becomes a very expensive problem. And I'll say again that that's where real estate professionals who do not have a law license can help guide your listeners. And that's one way they can market themselves, by pointing out all of the things that someone who has had practical experience in the side of moving the property can guide them to look for in what their attorneys include in their final judgments. Because let's face it, I've been doing this now I'm going to give it away for 40 years, actually. This year, it's a little scary. And during that period of time, I've seen these problems arise. So if I were doing something else like this, something related in real estate, but not practicing law, I still see the problems arise. And so I can help guide people without giving them legal advice. And that makes me a more valuable professional to them as a real estate agent. What are some of the other real estate fields of your listeners, Al, aside from being real estate lawyers and agents and brokers, appraisers?
Mortgage lenders, people that are in like self-directed IRA world, appraisers, brokers, title companies. I mean, you can keep going down the list. Just so many different areas that surrounded CPAs. Yeah.
So, all of them are, I hire all of them in the course of one of my cases, because listen, I'm not a mortgage lender. I know from a lawyer's eyes what it involves, but only a mortgage lender. It's like if you want to talk to a horse, you got to talk horse. So you really want, if you're a good lawyer, if you're a great lawyer, You want to reach out to the people who know something more than you do and surround yourself with professionals who work in the real estate market who know more than you do.
What's the horse quote?
Oh, if you want to talk to a horse, you got to talk horse.
All right, great. That just became a quote card. We'll make sure we get that out there. That's a good one. I love it. You should see, we have all the micro and all the quote cards that come out. So your face will be up there, and then all the micro stuff will be chopped up. Rick, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, going through a lot of these things and some golden nuggets along the way when it comes to divorce. One big question before we wrap everything up: what are some of the key things that people should be looking for in a divorce lawyer before they hire them, before they get involved, retaining them or referring them to somebody, whether it's in Florida or another state? What are some of those key aspects and elements that anybody should be looking for that ideal divorce attorney?
The first thing that I would look for if I were trying to identify the lawyer that's right for me is whether or not I would make sure that I had a consultation with them. Most family lawyers, at least in my view, most family lawyers worth having charge a consultation fee. Just like most PI lawyers worth having will take a contingency fee case. They don't value your case. And a lawyer who is giving you a free consultation, that's a lawyer who has an hour in his day, or maybe two, in which he has nothing to do. And if he has nothing to do, you've got to ask yourself why that is. So if he's not, being paid for his time, I had a mentor, a super old school guy, who used to say, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So the fact is, if you're not paying for a service, that's the value of the service you're getting. So be careful when you see free consultation. That's a lead for them. That's not an offer to help you. The second thing is, what kind of promises is this lawyer making? Because any lawyer in family law knows that the promises should be kept to boundaries as opposed to guarantees. And God love Alan Weinstein. That's another thing he used to say. If you want a guarantee, get a washing machine. Divorces don't come with a guarantee. It's not my shtick. I'm telling you what other people say. But I would say make sure you have a simpatico with the lawyer, be it an interview, consultation, virtually or in person. Make sure they're a lawyer who believes their time has value. Because if they don't believe their time has value, why should you? And make sure you go there with a list of questions. There is a book. Unfortunately, the name of the book escapes me at the moment, but the author is very distinctive name, Aliette Hernandez. Aliette is, and Kira, if you know the name of her book, maybe you could write it into Al now. Aliette is a former protege of mine who's practicing family law, and she's written a book with a list like that. And on the other side of divorces, there is a well-regarded family lawyer in Dade County whose name is Elizabeth Schwartz, and she wrote a book. Kira, I know you can write this one into Al. I believe it's Before I Do, that speaks to the list for your prenuptial agreements. So read those books, inform yourself like you would for anything else, and make sure that lawyer hits all your check marks before you put your good money down. That's what I would say.
Yeah, go through the whole list and really, really do your research and make sure that you know how many cases they've done or what they've worked on or people they've worked with, and really going down that whole checklist that Rick just talked about. It's huge. Not every lawyer is the same, and everyone's got different experience when it comes to their field. And like someone like Rick, he's seen this for 40 years. It's more than 40 years, right? Not 40-year mark, right? More than 40 years. Sounds better that way. Yeah. Right. Like a dinosaur. You're like you've seen it all. So love it. Rick, I had actually a great question on here. JB, Jatinder's watching. Do you even do presentations for realtors that you could share with realtors? Because JB, that'd be a great one for you.
Well, I have again, I hate to shamelessly plug everyone I know, but Kira and I have done a lot of presentations in tandem, and I've served as a panelist on a couple of presentations that Kira has done, which are real estate oriented, and I would be pleased. I love to mingle with my fellow professionals, and if there's a real estate group that would like to invite me to join, and if I could do it in tandem with you, Al, it'd be even more fun. But yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
That's how I network.
Yeah. JB, reach out to Rick. That'll be a good one right there. And I think he had even asked before, where do we find if the family has a trust set up? I didn't know if that was something we were getting into.
Yeah, that gets complicated by virtue of whether it's a premarital family trust or a postmarital family trust, and we'll need another hour for that one.
Part 2, Rick, in season 4. We'll make sure we got to have I feel like we have all these experts in the industries. I'm thinking we have to have, we'll have the Dave Day update on everything on creative deals that come up. We're going to have the Chad Fears title insurance update. We're going to have the Rick update, right? On everything title, on everything divorce. So that's going to be huge. But yeah, I'm sure there's so many things that we can get through with all of this stuff. JB, definitely reach out to Rick about that. It'll be huge. And Rick, this has been great. I mean, this has been a fun episode. I mean, I loved having you on the show. I mean, we could go on and on about so many things with this divorce and real estate stuff. I loved having you here. Before we wrap it up, man, any final words, final thoughts on anything divorce and real estate that you can really lay out there for people?
One of the most impactful things in your life is buying your marital residence or buying your first residence if you're not married. And one of the most psychologically impactful things in your life are getting married and getting divorced. It's kind of like death and birth. And you need to recognize that there are a host of professionals around you who are not emotionally involved, although they are empathetic and care about you. They're not emotionally involved in these important decisions you have to make. So when those two intersect, when divorce and property, come together, you need to reach out to people who can help guide you through that darkness. Yeah,
very important right there. Rick, you're the man. Thank you so much for being on. Hope you had a blast being on the episode. We love seeing you on here, and this is huge. I mean, if you didn't get all of his contact info, Rick, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
You know what? I'm just going to toss out my phone number because that's the easiest thing to write down and remember. That's 305-534-1323. Ask for Martha or Danya. It's spelled like the city Dania, and tell them you'd like to speak to me, and they'll set it up.
Great, right there. And JB, he had just posted, any Florida real estate help, please reach out to me, and he put his number right there. So make sure you take out your phone or take a snapshot of it. JB, he's the man. He'll help with all that kind of stuff. So. Yeah. And by the way, for everybody that reaches out to Rick, just make sure you get to him during office hours. Rick taught me that everybody reaches out before 9 and after 5 and on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, which seem to be the most popular days, right? But get him during office hours. That's the best way. Rick, I hope to see you soon, man. I hope to see you in Miami. We'll grab lunch and we'll catch up.
Just bring my Al Nicoletti shirt, huh?
Yeah, no, I got to get you the Al Nicoletti shirt. Mom's wearing the Al Nicoletti shirt. I'm watching it right now, but I'll make sure we get you the Al Nicoletti shirt. We'll send it to you. We'll FedEx it to you. Give it to you in multiple colors, too. You just got to let me know your size. So it'll be a lot of fun.
I'm not going to say that on air, though.
Well, you did the 40-year part, so you might as well tell us your shirt size, right? Rick, you're the man. Thank you so much, and it's a wrap. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, brother.
All right, everybody. This was, if you wanted to know anything on the basics of real estate and divorce, this was the episode. Rick's been doing it for more than 40 years. He's seen so many different letters that have come in. He understands all the divorce leads, seeing things in the public record. And I think the Golden Nugget takeaway was being an expert in your niche and knowing how to navigate the public records and taking some extra marketing steps using the public records, maybe to really tap into the divorce side of things. And also what happens with the marital home. all of that stuff. And before, how do you address all that stuff before the divorce even happens? There's some really interesting things there. So if you caught us in the middle or at the end, make sure you go back in the beginning, rewind everything, go back and watch the whole episode with Rick. It was huge. Yeah, JB, I'm going to make sure I get you a shirt too. Don't worry. We'll make sure I get you that. And thank you to all the fans and all the questions out there from JB. Gina, we got your question answered. You know it. I'm sure I'll hear about it. JB, Kira, Guillermo, Alan, thank you all so much for watching. And, I love it. Thank you all for being here Wednesday. And next week, it's Wednesday at 4 p.m. I have Brian Driscoll coming on the show talking all about motivated leads, how to get all these leads through social media marketing, all of this crazy stuff. He's a master of his craft when it comes to that. I've seen it firsthand. I've actually sat down to see what happens when he posts videos and things on media and marketing. So he's going to talk all about driving in leads and all of that kind of stuff. And that's it. This is a wrap, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show, and I'll see you next week. Take care.